Casting from the basement of La Penta, it's WICR.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sports Fall Jersey. Joe Archino back here. And obviously, the World Series is upon us. It's not just the start of the NBA season, and the narratives write themselves. And I don't think that we've seen a World Series like this in some time that has really carried such significance. And it's good for the sport in the regard that we're seeing new teams populate and get here now. We had the Royals last year, and now we will have an incredibly different outcome. But I do think it's easier to fall in love with the Cubs narrative than it is with the Indians narrative. But don't let that kind of distinction kind of fool you. Obviously, the Cubs, it's largely because it's been so profoundly long since they have won. There are so many historic moments in our country that hadn't happened or happened after the Cubs even won their title. So I think that fact alone makes it easy to root for the Cubs. But when I look at Cleveland, in what they have been able to do, the struggles that the city has had, and that's not to put down Chicago at all. It's a great place. I just went there this past summer. It's not an indictment on them at all, but I think when you look at the struggles Cleveland has had as a city, they have been through so much. And for the Cavaliers to win the NBA championship the way that they did, and now the Indians are in the World Series, if they're able to finish that off, the meaningful just run the Cavaliers went on would be extended even further, and it would just create something just that I don't think we've really ever seen or might not ever see again in professional sports. And I just saw a stat this morning that it's only happened 2 other times in sports. This is really the second time ever where a defending NBA champion will put up their banner, and then the same city baseball team will also be playing in the game 1 of the World Series. So that right there is so significant. You can see by the thin margin how significant that is. And Ohio State would have only added to that, but obviously they still have time now. But losing to Penn State like they did last weekend doesn't help their cause at all. But this is kind of a thing where if you're a neutral fan, you're in a position where you really can't possibly lose, because if the Cubs win, you will see something so incredible. I mean, we already saw the way that the city reacted when the Cubs got to the World Series, but if they're able to win that after all this time, all that pain on the field that they had experienced with the Steve Bartman incident and everything else, I think you would really see something just incredible that maybe again, you talk about meaningful, and I do think the Indians would be incredibly meaningful just as much and build off of what the Cavaliers did. But the Cubs, in their own right, would just do something incredible. But to me, I try to go back in my lifetime and think about the most meaningful titles that I ever saw across all sports. And to me, nothing still compares to what the Cavaliers did. And to me, it's because it was a movie. It really was. It's the LeBron James lineage. He gets drafted by the Cavaliers. He goes through pain and hardships. He takes them as far as any human possibly can. He tastes defeat. He leaves. The city turns on him. They hate him. He comes back. He's their hero. He gets back to the finals, loses. Year 2, he gets back there and wins, and then the victory that stems from that in the manner that they did. And that really was the perfect championship for the city of Cleveland after all that time of waiting to make it go to 7 games, to be down the way that they were, and then to respond and win. I think it really said it all. And to me, the Indians building off of that, it would just keep that momentum and that feeling alive for just a little bit longer. And to me, that would be something truly incredible. But both ways, no matter how you look at it, I think it's something so meaningful, and it's something baseball really needs. I remember this summer listening to Colin Cowherd interview Rob Manfred, and Manfred I really like because he's one of those guys where some commissioners, they're so afraid, ultra conservative about to answer any question that might be interpreted or spun in some way. But Sealy's a guy who just kind of goes out there and he answers the questions. If he can answer it, he will, and he's going to give you an honest one. And I think to Colin Cowherd, he gave him an honest answer. Colin said, you have to say, it would be good for business if the Cubs won. And then Manfred said, I cannot say that it wouldn't be bad for business. He said something like that, and there's nothing wrong with saying something like that, but certainly for the Cubs, it would be a boost to Major League Baseball. I don't think either way you look at it, Major League Baseball loses here. You either have Cleveland continuing the run that they went on. Obviously, the Cubs probably have better national appeal because of the storyline that's been there all season with them, as opposed to the Indians, where they've kind of building off what the Cavaliers did. But undeniably, to me, when I look at it, I think part of it has to be, you have to be a little worried if you're in Cleveland's corner because of the little bit of time they've had off and the way they kind of rolled through the Blue Jays. And the Cubs, they had to battle it out a little bit more with the Dodgers. But this is a series where both teams have been managed supremely well. Francona going up against Madden, really just smart guys across the board, guys who are just relentless, but at the same time are very fair with their teams and expect a lot out of them. But again, at the same time, I think their teams always understand it, and they always get that level of respect and treatment that they deserve. The bullpens from both teams, I think, are going to be a huge part in this series. And at the end of the day, it really is hard to predict it, because even when you look at the Mets and the Royals last season, when you look at the momentum that the Mets had going into that series and how it all crumbled so quickly, that can happen, and that's real. But that's why the sport is so unique in the way that it works, where if you cool off just a bit, it could shift the tides. But I don't think the Indians have been off enough to make it dramatically change what they're doing. I'm picking the Indians in this World Series just on the fact of that I do think that I'll always talk about something called the LeBron effect and something he's able to do, and I think his presence in that championship lifted and gave so much to that city that there's just some things in sports that are unexplainable, and there's a lot of that in the LeBron effect. But to me, a lot of it is this is a series where I hope it goes 7 games, and I hope that we get to milk every minute that we can out of it, because again, for the storylines of both to meet up the way that they have, this really might be one of the most meaningful World Series that we've ever seen, with the way both cities have struggled. Maybe Chicago obviously hasn't struggled economically, socially, some of the other things like Cleveland has, but I think nonetheless, the struggles they've gone through as a sports town, primarily with the Cubs obviously, is something that warrants them winning. But then on the Cleveland side, you can spin it however way you want it, but sometimes you just have to sit back, relax, and enjoy it, because it's going to be a great ride. But until the next time, Jersey Joe Archino here with the Sports Vault. Follow me on Twitter at Joe Archino and on Instagram, Jersey_Joe_Archino, and I'll catch everyone.